Hey guys, today I'm talking about the world's oldest irrigation system in the world. It was developed in China probably over 4,000 years ago. It spread across the entire world. It came to the Americas and it was brought here by the Spanish. It is super simple, requires nothing other than the natural action of the system to water and to slow watering when there's a lot of rain. It is the perfect way to keep your plants healthy. Even though these peppers are starting to show the ravages of nighttime temperatures dropping, they've benefited greatly from the system. So let's go into the greenhouse and I'll show you exactly how to make one and how to do a few modifications along the way. So guys, the system that's helped water my peppers throughout the summer and has helped boost what I already have, which is a micro irrigation system, is the Olla. And it is a very, very old way of watering plants. It works so simplistically, but it is a great way to keep the root systems of your vegetables, peppers, whatever you have outside growing. This system is so simple. If you don't want to set up a complex system of irrigation, this will be the way you want to go. It is really easy to monitor. You can do it probably in a matter of hours. You could set up an entire vegetable garden with this system with just about a half a dozen Ollas. So the key to the terracotta Olla system is the fact that you're using unglazed terracotta. If it's painted or glazed, this will not work because it uses the wicking action of the porous nature of terracotta to allow moisture to permeate the pot and slowly weep into the soil. So unglazed terracotta is how this system works. So terracotta is naturally porous, and the way that it actually works in the soil is through the process of adhesion and cohesion to the surrounding soil to the pot. So the slow seepage through the pot directly targets the root zones of your vegetables, peppers, or whatever else you have planted in the garden, and that's the secret of why it works so well. Unlike sprinkler systems, which are going to put a lot of water on the soil and you'll have a lot of runoff and an inefficient way of watering. So this is, even though it's 4,000 years old, is actually one of the most efficient ways to water your plants. So the Ollas target the root zone by putting water exactly where the plant needs it, and that makes for a healthier plant. You don't have excessive watering. It will also prevent weeds. So there's so many benefits to using an Olla. It's incredible that more people don't know about this system. So my zone here, 7A, does not have a massive problem with drought, but we do get drought conditions sometimes in the summer. I remember a few years ago, we had an entire summer, 3 months, where we had a 1,000-year drought. So something like an Olla will save your plants and it will slowly act as a perfect watering system for your vegetables, peppers, whatever it is, but it's a great way to do it. So Ollas are actually climate responsive. If you have a lot of rain, that will slow down the water seepage. If you have a drought situation, as I said previously, it will actually speed up and wick more water out to your root system. So earlier in the summer, I spent quite a bit of time looking for just the right Olla. And the ones I saw online were very small and very expensive. And from what I can understand, a lot of them, reading the reviews, a lot of them are broken in shipping. So going to your local garden center and purchasing terracotta plants is probably for me the best way to go, because also the Ollas that I looked at had a very small water capacity. One of these has nearly a gallon capacity, and if you go to look at your garden center, you can find terracotta pots that are even much, much larger, sometimes multi-gallon pots, which will water an entire garden if needed. So Ollas can actually prevent root rot, because when you have too much moisture in the soil, the wicking action comes to almost a complete stop. When there's lots of water out, we don't have to worry about the plant receiving too much moisture. So that's one thing. When we have a lot of rain, the Olla works in conjunction with that and stops the watering process until the soil begins to dry again. So it's critical to take into account the size of soil area that you're trying to keep moist. 3 of these will cover a 4 by 8 bed, 4 foot by 8 foot bed that I have. Some of the smaller Ollas you see online that are basically the size of a bottle, those are more well suited for a potted plant. So something where you're growing vegetables, you're going to want to size up quite a bit. And the Ollas I've seen that do have that kind of capacity are in some cases 70, 80, even $90. So something like this is a bargain if you just take the time to put it together. So these terracotta pots, 3 of these, like I said, in a 4 by 8 bed will cover the entire area. This would probably put out a radius of about 3 feet, allowing the moisture to go out to the root system. So just remember, the larger the pot, the bigger the radius. So about 3 feet for this size 3 of these in my bed would cover the entire area. So also you need to remember the size of lid you want to have, keeping anything out like insects or soil being accidentally washed into it. You want to bury it almost to the top, maybe leaving about a ½ inch to an inch to prevent any soil from getting washed into your Oya, because the more dirty this is on the inside, the harder the wicking action will be less likely to take place. So just remember, you want to keep any kind of debris from getting in there. Maybe even a larger size. If you have a lot of washing issues, you could have it kind of hanging out over here. But for me, this is about the right size because I don't bury it all the way up to the rim of the pot. Now, if you're planning on doing this in the summertime, you want to make sure you keep a close eye on your moisture content, and having a pH meter that has a water testing, soil moisture testing in it is really great. I always use this over and over for pH watering. So many uses you can come across this, so it's a great thing to have. But you want to test that water and start close to the Oya and then work your way out and see exactly where the moisture is getting to, and that will tell you how many of these you need to put in the size area that you're planting in, because you don't want to think that you're watering adequately and then you discover you've spaced them too far out. So it's an important thing to remember. Based upon the size, that's going to tell you how many you need to put in that area and what you're planting, and your soil conditions and the weather conditions as well, how often you get rain. Now, as a general rule of thumb, planting in your garden, since you're going to have 3 of these for every 4x8 bed, or in my case 4x8 bed, I'm going to be planting my plants within 1 feet of the Oya to make sure that it's getting proper moisture. If you find that you're seeing leaf wilting or it looks like the plant's drying out, then you may want to consider putting the plant that you've got a little closer to the Oya if you're not doing a regular watering schedule. So this year I put my irrigation system tubing into the Oya. Now it's a micro irrigation. It puts out very little water and it only runs for about 1 minute every other day. So in this case, in this particular bed, I just let it do that to see what would happen as an experiment. It seemed to work perfectly. The Oya stayed close to the top. They did wick out more fast in the heat of summer, especially when the plants were drawing out more water and the soil was dry. So if you don't have an irrigation system or a drip system, you can refill these about once a week. You don't want to let it get below 50% of its water capacity. So just remember, you're going to monitor these at least once a week. Now in the description below, I'm going to put a radius and coverage chart giving you the distance in inches from the Oya and what percentage the water percentage is going to cover in that area. So just take a look at that below. Maybe it'll be a little bit more self-explanatory and I'm not doing a good job of explaining it here, but that will help you determine what size oil you have and what radius is going to cover in your vegetable garden. So guys, one thing you can do is, if you don't have an in-ground system, irrigation drip system, you can use a simple 5-gallon bucket, lidded of course, because you don't want things getting into the bucket. You don't want mosquitoes laying their eggs in there. But what you would do is you'd buy some of the irrigation tubing. I can put a link to it down below, but this irrigation tubing, you'll drill a hole in the bottom of the bucket and have it running out to all 3 of your Oyas you have in your 4x8 bed, or how many ever you have in that area. And then you'll have a control irrigation at the top where you can adjust it to just a very slow drip. So that way, as it wicks out every day, it's slowly replenishing your Oya over that period of 24 hours. And you'll just only need to check this and occasionally check your Oyas. But that type of system is super simple, requires no electricity or special tubing, just some flexible tubing like this, and it's very cheap. You can buy it by 100-foot roll. So that's one thing you can do to help having to maintain every single Oya. You'll just have one reservoir going out to each one of your Oyas in a specific garden area. Now, another final thing to know about, if you do decide to go with the reservoir and the drip irrigation system, you're going to want to make sure that you use something like a aquarium caulking or non-toxic caulking that you can put around where you're exiting your main reservoir and also going into each Oya. You'll want to put a barrier around it and leave a small opening so that your drip irrigation tubing can go into that spot, so you don't have a nesting area for mosquitoes. Even though it's a small opening, mosquitoes are very good at finding water, so they'll go in there and lay their eggs. So just remember, you want that opening to have a little bit of silicone or aquarium caulking and just a small opening around one side so that your tubing can come into your Oya. Now, one thing you want to take into consideration when setting up an Oya system is what type of tap water you have. If you have a high mineral or high calcium concentration in your water, that can clog the pores over time in your Oya. So the best type of water would be a captured rainwater or a something of maybe filtered water, but you just want to make sure that your water content does not clog up the pores, because you'll just basically be having a swimming pool in your garden that does not leach out. Now, another important note about refilling your Oyas is if you refill them very quickly and allow them to overfill and wash down the sides, you can create an air gap between the soil and the Oya. So that will render your Oya completely useless, and it will not work if you have an air gap. So you want to be very careful when you're refilling it, and don't wash any of the soil away from the sides, because it will be just a nice decorative thing in your vegetable garden. So guys, I'm going to show you how to double the capacity of your Oya just by combining two Oyas together. And you won't need this lid right here. You're going to basically just take some aquarium caulking and you're going to put around the top. Now also, I have put a piece of tape on the bottom of this. I'm going to fill the hole in this one with the aquarium caulking and then go around the edges of the Oya to simply attach two together, and that will effectively double the amount of water capacity in the Oya. You just want to be very careful and go all the way around. Now some of these aquarium caulks can have quite a strong smell, but they are non-toxic once they're dry. Fish are very easily injured by any type of toxic substance. If you know anything about koi, if you just use regular tap water that has a high level of chlorine, it will literally kill your koi in a matter of hours sometimes. So just remember that once this is dry, it's perfectly safe. We're going to attach the two together. Then we'll probably go back again and put a second layer around the edges. We want to make sure that they're touching each other in just the right way. Now this will completely double the capacity. You'll have to bury it deeper. You're still going to have to bury it up to here, but you can use your tray on top of this, or you can just use something like a small pebble to cover the top, and it's easy to refill. Now, monitoring the water is a little bit harder. You could use a stick with something like a small piece of wood on the end of it so it will go up. You can test that and then cover it when you're not using it. When you remove your saucer lid or your stone, it will rise up, letting you know there's plenty of moisture, plenty of water in it. But if it's all the way down, you'll know that it needs to be refilled. So we're going to finish up this little project and I'll show you how it all comes together. Okay, so I'm just going to take a piece of scrap wood I have here and just run it around the perimeter of the Oya and just try to make sure that it's spread evenly. And this will take about 24 hours to dry. And if there's any leakage, we can come back and add more of the aquarium caulking. But I'm just going to carefully go around and smooth it out all the way around to make sure there's a good seal. And also, as I said earlier, I put a piece of tape with a little bit of caulking on there. That will prevent. Also, if you want to use something like a cork, you could use a cork, champagne, wine cork, whatever, but you're just going to make sure there's no leaking. And you can easily test it before you put it into the garden. And so this has quite a strong smell, I can tell you, but that is the best bet, is to use aquarium caulking. Now, when you're burying this Oya, you want to make sure that you're pressing the soil quite a bit around the base of the Oya, and as each layer of soil you put in there, you want to make sure that it's well pressed up against, because no moisture will be coming from this area. So you want to make sure all the open porous area of your Oya is going to be leaching water into the surrounding soil. So that's just one thing to remember, is to make sure that your soil is nice and compacted around the Oya. This is quite a bit larger, and it's going to have an even larger radius. So what would have been maybe 3 feet may be going up to 4 feet, because the amount of water and the amount of moisture it can put out. So 2 of these in a 4x8 bed will probably work if you want to seal these together like this, instead of going with a more simplistic, just putting the lid on a buried terracotta pot or Oya. Now, as I said earlier, terracotta is naturally porous, but if you want to make sure that it's even better at slowly leaching that water, taking some fine sandpaper and doing the inside and the outside will help roughen up those outer edges, that when the clay was fired, it will help the porous nature of Oya to work even better. So just some fine grit sandpaper, just lightly rubbed all over the inside and the outside of the Oya, will help it work even more. So guys, this pot has about 24 to 48 hours depending on the humidity and some other conditions. So I'm just going to leave this in the greenhouse and allow it to the silicone to cure. But one thing to remember is to monitor very carefully once you install the Oya in your garden. You want to do a soil monitor test within 6 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches, and see how well it's working. And that process may take a few days for the water to completely leach out. Also, you have to take into account how much rain you're getting. So if you're getting a lot of rain, you're not going to be able to test this. The best time to test it is in a drought situation or dry soil. So guys, one of the things that has really made me think a lot about micro irrigation, Olla watering, and alternative methods of watering such as rainwater harvesting is about 10 to 15 years ago, we had a severe drought. And so I was watering quite a bit with the water from my home, and my water bill multiplied by a factor of 10, from going under $100 to well over $100. So it was quite a shock seeing that bill. So finding alternative methods to water your garden is a great thing to do, because if you're spending massive amounts of money watering your garden, well, you could just go to the produce section of your local grocery store and it would probably balance out just to buy it directly. Other than the possible pesticide issues, that would be really the benefit of just buying from the store rather than growing it yourself. But anyways, to make it more shortened up, Olla watering is a great way to water, especially if you combine it with rainwater harvesting. So guys, I hope you'll consider doing this when you're planning your next garden, or maybe next spring or summer. You'll consider doing this. For us, it's the end of the season, and it's just something that I probably should have already talked about earlier on in the video series. But anyways, I hope you liked the video, and if you found something useful, please like and subscribe. If I left something out, or you want to add something or create a new idea for me, just leave a comment down below. I'm always reading them and always trying to respond to each and every comment. So have a great day, guys.